Welcome back to the Gas Compression Podcast. I am here today with Jason Herrick. So Jason is the president of Pantera Energy, based out of Amarillo, Texas. Pantera was founded in 1982, and their initial projects were drilling deals in the Texas Panhandle and western Oklahoma. Over the last 30 years, they have grown the business through an aggressive acquisition program. They've completed over 200 transactions, various sizes, expanding their operations and continuing a steady drilling program. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Michael. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so you've got a very interesting background, and then came back to run the family business. So you helped start a consulting firm in the Netherlands. That's right?
Right.
Is that like right out of college?
No, initially out of college, I went to work for what was then Anderson Consulting. It eventually became Accenture. So right out of school, I was an industrial engineering major at Texas A&M. Mm-hmm. Went to work for them for several years, and then was lucky enough, and I've been looking for a chance to go overseas, but was lucky enough to have a colleague or a friend, I guess from A&M, I would say, that was they were starting this new company, and it was a chance to kind of move overseas and get to go with a startup. So yeah, I was employee number 4 to show up and moved to Amsterdam. We were trying to be kind of the first of our kind of company in mainland Europe. We had some competition in the US and the UK, but we were trying to kind of hit the European market. So it was a great learning experience. See what a startup was and see what that kind of world looked like. It was people heavy. Mm-hmm. We were doing consulting services, so a lot of lessons there. A lot of lessons about working in a European environment versus a U.S. environment. It has the good and bad of that. But had a chance to come back to Pantera Energy Company, and it was a great chance to do that. It was a good timing to do that. My father had started the company, like you said, in 1982, and so he and I had been talking over that period of time, and it was kind of a good chance to come back and transition for that. So
it was more of he was thinking about retirement, or maybe you have to sell the business, but if you were wanting to run it, you could come back in and...
Yeah, there was lots of things that kind of happened in that process. My dad had a heart attack during that, survived. He's in good shape now, but that was one of those things I think that got him thinking about what is the transition here, or is there something there? And yeah, it was a good time for me as well. I was wanting to get back to the States, and was looking at this as a really unique opportunity. So he and I were able to sit down and kind of talk about what that might look like and what Pantera Energy Company might look like in the future, and those things aligned, luckily. Mm-hmm. And it's been a great move. It's an industry I've really fallen in love with and love to be in. And really, my father's been an incredible mentor, too. He was very gracious in this whole process of transitioning, and it's been a great, it's really a great relationship that we have to be able to do that.
Yeah, I kind of similar story. So yeah. My dad's my mentor. Has been very gracious in the transition period, and so I know what that feels like. So tell me about Pantera from 1982 until you came along. So how did it get started? Yeah. Initially doing stuff in Texas, Oklahoma. Tell me about Pantera.
Yeah, like you said, when my dad started this, it was just him and a geologist and landman, and they were putting together deals and getting farm outs from the majors and putting drilling deals together. And so they were kind of doing them all from scratch, kind of really put them together, and would go drill them and put them on and operate them. When the economics for drilling got really tough in the late 80s, I would say, really switched gears kind of at that point, started looking for producers, looking for production, and there was a lot of auction houses that came on at that time, the EPCOs of the world and the oil and gas clearinghouses and such, and the majors were selling off a lot of their fields, and so there was an opportunity to kind of step in there and start looking for fields that had the characteristics that he was really looking for, like more of a long life, mature fields that you could really build an asset base on. So they started buying those at that point. Ended up partnering. We've been longtime partners with with a couple of guys out of the Pampa area. So the Curtis family that has a well servicing company out of Pampa, Joe and Jackie Curtis, and Rick Leverage, who had a Borland Leverage Pipe and Supply company for a long, long time. And those guys have been partners with us and to this day, it's been an incredible partnership. And it was really them teaming up together with this group, with my dad and this group, providing kind of the back of house, the engineering, the land work, the geology and accounting work, and then Joe and Jackie had rigs and roustabout crews, and were able to do a lot of that work, and Rick had pipe, and so we were able to go out there and do all those things as a group, and started buying properties out, and bought some properties really in this West Panhandle field out here in the backyard of Pampa and Dumas, and bought a few small packages along in there, and that kind of kicked off what would become Pantera. I came back in 2001 and really just was trying to learn the business for the most part, pumped for a little bit.
Did you work at all, like growing up in Amarillo? Did you work in the business? Did you go out and see the crews or any of that?
Some of that, I thought I was. I think when I realized when I actually got into the business, I wasn't doing nearly as much as I thought that I was. Yeah. When I was younger, so it was a great chance to kind of get out, and I spent kind of that first year and a half doing that, really being out more in the field and seeing how things work, and around the compressors and compression. A big part of our business is the compression work, and then slowly kind of transitioned back where we really got focused on acquisitions and started buying, if they were mom and pops that were looking to sell, majors that were maybe leaving the area, or bigger companies that were trying to leave the area and kind of exit this. There was a chance to kind of do that. And we were pretty aggressive, and we bought a lot of properties, over the next 10 or 15 years, really building out. We had about 120 properties we operated when I came on in 2001. We operate about 1,800 wells today, and stretch up into Southwest Kansas, Oklahoma Panhandle, and then all throughout the Texas Panhandle. So
wow, how do you guys look at oil and gas? Is it one and the same? Is oil separate than compression? I mean, how's that split up?
We have always been a gas focused company and continue to today. Of our product mix, we're 80% gas and 20% oil. Mm-hmm. We do like the area that we're in because it does have a lot of liquid content to it. Mm-hmm. So it's always been higher valued gas that you're selling at the wellhead. So it's not necessarily just a dry methane, but a kind of a mix of all that, and that certainly helps the economics. So we watch them both because they all kind of tie together in terms of pricing and commodity pricing. Mm-hmm. But we're certainly more of a gas. We've been a gas-based company. We're doing more oil, or trying to diversify ourselves as we go on the product side, but gas has always been our core. Compression has been our core because we focus on these mature fields. Mm-hmm. and really work. That's where I think we've added value when it really has come down to it. I joke with people. I mean, really, I think what we are is, I think we're a really good operator. I really do believe that. And I think we've got people that are really excellent at what they do. And we particularly excel on the surface side of the production side. So we don't do a lot of lease up, greenfield leasing, where we're going to go out and put a drilling rig to work and just go develop out an area. We focus on buying, producing developed areas. We will drill. We'll add wells. We'll replace wells where we think that is, and those types of things. But what we are good at is really taking things that have been out there and improving them, improving the marketing side on them, improving the operational side pieces on there, and bringing, kind of conglomerating all of that together with some really good folks that understand how to maximize production. And that's really where we've kind of found our niche.
When you're talking about compression being the biggest part of your business, is it recip, or you have a lot of screw compressors? How do you move? What's the biggest way that you move gas?
Yeah, we probably own outright about probably 450 compressors across our whole fleet of wells in various capacities. Most of the time, at this point, here in 2022, we're mostly on screw compression. Mm-hmm. We do have some recips in the field. We have some liquid rings in the field. It's funny to watch as the reservoir conditions have changed over time. I feel like Pantera Energy Company, even before I was here, was really one of the real pioneer companies out there in the compression world, at least for this particular part of the area, in maximizing the various. So we have gone through kind of all of them, from blowers to rotary vanes to liquid rings, and now I would say most of what we have are screw styled compression. We've moved almost all to electric drives out there. We have some recips out in the field as well, and we've got that means a full mechanics and electricians and staff for PM, and they do a great job of managing that fleet for us. But compression is kind of our world for sure. We live in it every day of keeping those things going.
What has been one of the biggest changes since you've come along? So your dad, you and your dad have a generational gap. So since you've come along, 2001, what have you done differently? I mean, you've obviously made a lot of acquisitions, but other than that, what's kind of changing at Pantera since you put your leadership in place?
Well, a lot of the functions, as we talked about early on, were really kind of split between the partnership as a whole. And as time has gone on and as our portfolio has expanded, we've brought much more of that in-house with Pantera. So we always contracted out all of our pumpers and our rouse crews and all those things I'm talking about. We just didn't have those on staff. Today, we have those as Pantera employees. So I mean, we have a great majority of our pumping staff is Pantera employees, our mechanics, our electricians, which brings everything else into it. We need people to find lines, and we need, and then operations folks that manage those folks. So from a staffing standpoint, as we've grown our company, we've filled back in really with expertise on the ground within our company that can handle a lot of our daily needs, rather than for many, many years that was all contracted work.
And expensive, probably really expensive.
Expensive, but more what we've been able to do by bringing really good folks in house is you get consistency. We can share that information across our whole organization, because every little bit that everybody's doing along the way has importance to our bottom line. So, understanding what the PM side of our compression work looks like is absolutely critical to sitting in here with my CFO in the office to talk about what our expense projections are for the next year.
Right.
So I feel like when you have all that, everything out of house, it's a little bit hard to transfer that knowledge. And by having that within our organizational structure, you start to realize really where your major pinch points are, both from a expense side and a revenue side. And for us, I think it helps us get focused on the things that really matter. We talk a lot about in our company about, hey, spend time on what really moves the needle. And we're here to to maximize our gas production and maximize the price that we can get for it at the wellhead. And so what does that look like when you get down into the details of that? Is complex and complicated, and you really got to understand it's easy to talk about it on a high level. It's a little harder to talk about it on how do we keep that compressor running at a more efficient level? That's tougher, and you got to have really good feedback and good information from your staff in order to make those decisions.
So talking about staff, mechanics, electricians, all of that side of business, that's one thing. I kind of took a little detour on my podcast and talked about the skilled trades and how that's kind of been an issue. And it seems like different pockets. You talk to people in the Permian Basin, and it is just, it's a lot different scenario than I talked to a guy at Williams up in Wyoming, and he said, oh, we had no problem getting mechanics. Yeah, absolutely not. I got a list of applications. We're good. We're staffed. You talk to someone. It just depends on where you go. So how is that for Pantera, finding the skilled trades, electricians, mechanics.
Yeah, it's there's no doubt it's difficult. I do think that where, in my mind, what happens with the Permian and some areas that have really suffered the boom busts of the times, that mentality, it sticks with people. It just does. It sticks with people, right? We were very lucky, and we managed carefully from a company standpoint, but we didn't let anybody go during the pandemic. And even when things got bad in 2016, when things got bad in 2008, when things got bad in 2002, we have continued to keep our staffing consistent. So that makes it a lot easier to have these conversations. I think that the mentality sometimes of the oil and gas world, and this is some of the problem, I particularly feel for service companies when they're on this side, you start cutting things to the bone, and sometimes there's just no more bone to go.
Right.
And it does affect your workforce because you can't provide consistent, mentality that's out there. And so we have worked very hard at our company to maintain that, even when it was very painful to do so. And I think that's paid dividends. I really do. We've got great folks, and it is more difficult when you're in areas that get really highly competitive and then slack off all of a sudden, and that changes the dynamics. For our area, we've been a kind of a consistent presence, so I think it's helped us overall to maintain really good folks.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do if you're always going up and down and having to readjust to market conditions.
You mentioned that about, you guys are a family-owned business. What is the major difference in producer, like how you operate, or do you know how you operate versus a Energy Transfer or these other big majors out here? Because that's the same thing. We're a small family-owned business, so when times get tough, we can make those decisions and say, we're not going to let anybody go. Just sweep the floor or something. We'll keep paying you through this hard time. What are some of the major differences between an independent family-owned producer like you and then the majors?
Yeah, I think that you kind of nailed it there. And maybe it's some of its size. A lot of it is ownership for sure of it, but it's really about having a relationship with the folks that are part of your organization. And the family part of it for us is not just between my dad and I, and it's a family-owned deal. I mean, I really feel like this is a family within a family, and we spend a lot of time together, and we have seen marriages and kids and grandkids and all of and people pass away, and all the things that happen in a typical family happen within our company, and so when you're living that all together, it's a lot different mentality, I think, than when you're on the top floor of a Dallas office building, and it's just a name on a piece of paper. Sometimes it's just a number on a deal, and you're operating from a different mindset of, I've got to get to this number, and this is the path of least resistance. When it's not like when you're in an environment like we are, that's the last resort. I mean, that's the last. I mean, it's got to be. You're going down. Everybody's going down with the ship. Right? And so there is a different mentality, I think, when it comes to that. And it's just the nature of the beast. But you've got flexibility that you probably don't have when you're a middle-level manager at a larger company, that just gets told what to go do.
That's right.
How
many employees do you have at Pantera?
We have 54.
Okay.
And we've got field offices, so we kind of stretch. You can kind of track where our we have an office in Pampa, and then Dumas, and then Guyman, and then Liberal, and then Garden City, and then our headquarters here in Amarillo. So that pretty well tracks, where the majority of our production really is.
Yeah. You touched on COVID, so we can't talk about anything for the next 5 years without asking. Number one, how did that? Well, kind of know how it affected you. How'd you get through that? And then also, was there anything that came out of that made you better? I've talked to several people who said things like, yeah, because of that, we had to start doing this, or we did this thing in-house now, or we changed directions, but we're still doing it. So
Yeah.
how'd that treat you?
So it was totally honestly, it was one of the toughest years I probably ever had as a leader in a company. Or it was mind-boggling, and it felt like you were making decisions, nearly every week based on information that you really didn't have. And
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
and trying to guide, the livelihoods and lives of a whole lot of people with so much that was out of your control. And you're trying to weigh, the health and safety of your employees, and you're trying to weigh the livelihood of your business. And it was one of the just absolute most difficult personal things I've probably gone through over the course of that year.
Yeah.
And, then you layer on top of it for the oil and gas business. We're just getting creamed, right?
Prices just fall out.
It just goes away. Demand just falls off the face of the earth, and there's really not a path to where that's going to change. So, I feel like we were, luckily going into it, we've always been a pretty lean, mean ship, and we still were producing product every day. And so we were still out there doing what we did, and continued to kind of work through it. And of course, most of our guys are out in the field anyway, so it wasn't too big of a deal to distance, because we're a lot of times they're standing by themselves in a section of land with a wellhead in front of them. So we worked through that, and like I said, we were able to keep everyone on staff and work through that bit. Probably like every company, we got absolutely serious ratcheted down on every cost and every expense. Right. And we were very quick to go shut in production that wasn't economic. Tried to react to the market as quickly as we could and get things down to really what you knew could make money in that environment, which was less and less and less as we were going through that. So it was a very quick cleanup of our portfolio, and it was a very harsh look at our expenses and what we really needed, and it was a cut down to what can we get by with. And maintenance is one of those things. The preventive maintenance was one of those things you're going, how long can we really go without changing that belt? Yeah. You start getting into those conversations, right? And so you have those discussions, and I think what we did come out of that with is a better process internally of really evaluating on a, if you want to call it on a unit basis or a cost basis, but what is really your true cash producing assets, and focusing really focusing on those. And you can call it the 80-20 rule. You can call it lots of things, right? But we spend in a high price environment, you spend probably too much or an inordinate amount of time on the 80% of the wells that only make you 20% of all your money. And when it's in a low price environment, you almost have to say, we're going to ignore this 80%, but we are going to get really, really focused on that 20%. We're going to make sure that those do something. And I honestly think that mentality has been good for us to come on out of that with, and continue to really apply that to our business structure to say, we only have so much time. Mm-hmm. Everybody only has so much time. We all, and so where do you really want to focus in and go do stuff that really makes you money, and less time on all the stuff that's maybe just work to work kind of deal.
Yeah. So coming out of that, looking at, this is 2022, gas prices are up. Where are they at today?
Yeah, we're back over $4,
$4.50, somewhere around there. Yeah. So what does that look like for, what's your outlook for 2022, both just kind of economy wise and for Pantera?
Well, we have a very optimistic view of 2022. again, we have a high liquid content in our gas, so we also benefit a lot from the run up that's been in distillates and in the crude market, kind of as a whole, as that kind of trickles down to the other heavier elements within the gas stream. That's been a real benefit to us as well. And so not only is the gas at a range where, honestly, a few years ago, I was at the point where I don't know that I ever thought I'd see this again. I think there are some real structural things out there that are supportive of a higher price environment. And I think what has been exposed through COVID was that it is a lot harder to get up to that, that we're at a lot closer supply-demand level than maybe was even recognized going into the 2019 timeframe, when really we already saw gas prices kind of falling apart at the end of 19. The truth is, I think we are a little bit tighter on that overall supply-demand as a whole, and it takes a lot more time to ramp to those areas to get there. Frankly, I don't feel like the real price out there for what generates enough activity in the oil field. I think we're high. I honestly think we're high right now. I think $92 oils is too high. I'm not complaining about it. Don't get me wrong, but I think that sweet spot price where we don't see demand destruction or consumer switching probably resides more something in your 70s range. Yeah. And I think on the gas side, I've always felt like that same mentality exists, and I always thought it was somewhere in the mid threes, where you have enough incentive to generate new work, but you're not oversaturating the market with B and C tier projects. Right. And so I think there will be, over the course of at least, I'll say, the next 2 years. I don't know if it'll all happen in 22, but I think by the end of 23, you'll see some settling in the market, and probably come back down to kind of a sweet spot where there's enough incentive to develop, but there's not this over incentive to get down to projects that probably shouldn't be done. Right.
Like the 80-20 rule.
Right. And so I think that will kind of self-correct, and from a operator and an oil and gas producer side, you really are just asking for stability. Right. Let's get something that's kind of you can maintain. We can all live with. We can live with, right? Yeah. It's the swings that get you always, and so some stability for a couple of years would be great. So we are back doing some projects. Some of our top tier projects. We did some drilling here at the end of the year last year, and we're implementing some projects all kind of throughout our portfolio right now. I'm working up in Kansas pretty hard right now as well. So we've got projects that now work and are economic, and we're trying to take advantage of the time. And so I feel like we're in a spot right now where, for us as a company, we'll be active in 22, we'll be active in 23, and hopefully have a really good, strong recovery cash flow year. Mm-hmm. We kind of got on both sides of it, of 20 and 21, you kind of went through both years, and you're just kind of floating along, just surviving. So you would hope that 22 would be a year where you can kind of maybe have some stability and recovery year.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Everybody I've talked to this year so far has kind of said the same thing. I think oil and gas energy guys are pretty optimistic it's almost like we're wanting to will it into place.
Right.
It's going to be a great year. But I think I agree. Everything seems like it's kind of setting up to be a good, stable couple years. So, man, I appreciate you coming on, and it's good to talk to a family-owned company that's doing the right thing and taking care of people and just doing great things. So thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Michael.